My name's Arlene Matheson, and I'm a co-chair of the Seniors for Climate and Equity Committee, along with Mark Schultz. And we also have Mike Walker presenting with us today. I'm really happy to share our work with you. Our committee's purpose is twofold. One is to advance equitable clean energy in Minneapolis through joining the UNIDOS Minneapolis Climate and Equity Program. And the second is to provide an on-ramp within the chapter for seniors who are concerned about reducing the impacts of climate change and who want to build a better future. I retired early in order to devote my time to climate action after realizing how far behind we are in reducing emissions. Being forced to stay inside during entire summers because of wildfire smoke and extreme heat is not how I envisioned spending my retirement years, and I would like to help reverse that, not just for myself, but for everybody. And as I've been learning more about the state of our climate and environment and ways to improve them, it's become clear that collective action centered on equity and racial justice is really the only path forward. The Trump regime's policies are trying to reverse all the progress that we have made. And that's why I'm so happy to have the interest and commitment of our chapter. And now I'll turn it over to Mark to talk more about why we joined the UNIDOS Minneapolis Climate and Equity Campaign. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, Mark Schultz. Arlene is the first co-chair, and I'm sort of the second co-chair of the committee, which, by the way, we have named the Seniors for Climate and Equity. That's the name of this issue committee of the Minneapolis Area DFL Senior Caucus. I want to say that taking the near-term history, how did this campaign come about? One of the first significant acts was when Mayor Fry signed on a UN document, the Race to Net Zero, to really move municipalities and universities and other non-state, non-federal governments action on climate change, places where we could move more quickly and further to address this crisis. That happened in 2021. There was a lot of organizing to put some meat on those bones or to flesh it out and to actually implement it. And there was a climate and equity plan passed in 2023 by the city council and signed by the mayor. So I want to say Minneapolis, like a lot of cities, we do this. It is an appreciable forward motion against climate change. Local action is so important. With the Trump regime, the Trump regime is the fossil fuel industry. And they're going in exactly the wrong direction, but we can move here in our city. UNIDOS is the lead of the climate and equity campaign in the city. They're an organization with a tremendously successful track record, leading the Monarca training that was so important for our resistance, working on and winning driver's licenses for all. With UNIDOS was the lead on that, and with this climate and equity campaign. The thing, and just to speak to the equity component here, the focus, not entirely, but the focus is on the green zones in Minneapolis. Mike is going to talk about that in a little bit, but these are areas that are with racially and economically marginalized people where there is an excessive, heavy load of pollution. That's what the green zones are. And so our work in part focuses there. And for jobs to be with training and hopefully a path to unions, really looking for to fill that, again, not completely, but have a real recruitment effort for BIPOC folks to have these jobs so this economic development moves us forward and doesn't go into the same patterns where whites have primarily benefited. Okay, so that's a mouthful. There's a lot we're covering, but we can take the steps. We can make a positive difference and be a positive model against corporate power and authoritarianism. I want to turn it over to Senior Caucus member Mike Walker, who is also on the core team of the UNIDOS Climate and Equity team, campaign.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks, Arlene and Byron, also for helping plan and inviting us to share information today. As Mark said, I'm a member of the Senior Caucus. I'm a retired educator and have gotten involved with UNIDOS. And today we're going to kind of give the 20,000 foot overview so that you can understand how UNIDOS is working on climate here in Minneapolis. And then at the end, we have some resources. I see some have been posted in the chat already and inviting you to some house parties where you can learn more and kind of go deeper. So kind of talk first about UNIDOS and climate. We'll talk about climate inequity in Minneapolis. The Climate Inequity Plan, as Mark said, was passed in 2023 with full unanimous support of the city council as well as the mayor. We'll talk about the potential of thermal energy networks and see where those are actually coming into play to help fully decarbonize the city, which would have a huge impact on our climate and our resiliency. And then where we go from here. So those are kind of the four main components. So if we look at who UNIDOS is, it was actually founded in 2007 as an organization called Navigate. In fact, Councilmember Lene Palmisano from Ward 13 was one of the founding members. It was used to support immigrant families and folks to navigate becoming U.S. citizens. It's a grassroots organization, and they really focus on building power through organized people and organized funds to help advance social, racial, and economic justice. They work, as Mark said, worked on driver's license for all. They've been working on healthcare, immigration, education, and climate justice as a core of their work. So when we talk about climate, UNIDOS has been working on that issue, and because many immigrant communities have been greatly impacted by climate. So if we look at the next slide, if you think about immigrant communities, many families immigrated to the United States because of climate things happening in their own countries of origin. And then they're also dealing with it here because in many cases, as Mark said, he talked about the green zones, and we'll show an image of that in a minute. But they end up be impacted more because of changes in climate. We also are looking to continue investment to address climate and racial equity crises simultaneously. And one of the big focuses is to do it block by block instead of each individual having to do it, focus on every block kind of moving along so that everyone can take advantage of this. So the slide here about the climate crisis, we know that the last 10 years have been the hottest on record. When we were kids, I'm 63, and I know I never had a red flag alert or air quality alerts when I was growing up. And that was before the Clean Air Act, right? So this is something that has really affected things. For my family last year, we had our air conditioner running more than we ever have, not because it was too hot, but because the air quality was bad and we needed to keep the bad air out. Recently, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency conducted a study and took a look at the cost impact of not doing anything in regards to climate. And by 2040, the state overall is going to be spending at least $20 billion because of the effects of climate change. And if you think of the state and Minneapolis's cut in that, that means that Minneapolis is probably going to be spending $1 billion to $1.5 billion of that is going to be absorbed by us. So that's on top of anything else that we're spending money on. And so we really think it's important to mitigate that as much as possible. And if we spend a little bit more now, it's going to cost a lot less. It's kind of like the old Fram oil filter ad where they said, you can pay me now for this $4 filter, or you can pay me later for hundreds of dollars in costs. So some of you may have attended some of the Monarca trainings on democracy defense. And they talk about three Earths, the idea of the liberal democracy as we knew it, now living in an authoritarian world, and Earth 3, what is the future we want to fight for? And I was reminded that the mission of the Senior Caucus is to build a better world for our children, our grandchildren, and ourselves. So what type of legacy do we want to leave for our descendants? And what is our responsibility? And that Earth 3, that next slide there, is really up to us and what we can do to help make this a better world. And I think the work that we're doing on climate and equity here in Minneapolis, as well as at the state level too, can have a great impact on making the world a better place to leave for our descendants. So in Minneapolis, we have a North Star goal that we talk about around climate, that every building in Minneapolis be comfortable, affordable, and carbon free. Now we say by 2040. The climate equity plan actually says 2050, but we really believe that in order to really mitigate things and make it sustainable, we need to try and get there by 2040. We want to provide access to green jobs. You may have seen recently that the Rise Up Center, the old YWCA, is being transformed into a job training site for green jobs and other jobs, along with daycare and that. And that's was part of Unidos was part of that work. Building safe, healthy, and climate resilient neighborhoods connected by accessible carbon-free transportation is a big goal. And I do want to give a shout out, both Senator Scott Dibble as well as Frank Hornstein, representative, were instrumental in getting that Rise Up Center up and running. So now we look at our focus in Minneapolis, the climate and equity. There you can see the map of those green zones. Now, Minneapolis has the country's third largest temperature disparity between formerly redlined areas and those with no restrictions applied. And it's nearly 11-degree difference between the hottest and coldest. These impacts and it's so important then that we treat any climate planning with equity as well. And so back in 2022, actually, knowing that the city needed to update their climate and equity plan, a group of partners, including MN350, Minnesota Power, Unidos, 100%, and others, developed a People's Climate and Equity Plan to address both things at once. And that plan was approved, as I said, unanimously in 2023. 85%, on the next slide here, 85% of what the People's Climate and Equity Plan had in it was adopted by the city, which was pretty amazing. It's funded by utility franchise fees, a portion of what we pay extra for our utility bill each month. That started at $10 million when the plan was adopted in 2023. Last year, we were able to get that raised to an additional $4 million to $14 million for this year. Now, one thing to know about this is that 70% of our greenhouse gas emissions come from the buildings, our residences and businesses and other buildings. So our campaign has really been focusing on home weatherization, electrification, and the potential for network geothermal as a way to take care of this largest chunk. And so as you can see on the next slide, we have lots of the components of the equity plan. We're focused on that left-hand side with the Green Cost Share program, the careers pathways from that Rise Up Center, outreach and community awareness, working on the reduction of carbon pollution by 2030 and becoming carbon neutral by 2050, getting to that net zero that Mark mentioned from the UN. But you can see along the other side, there's other things. There's working on our tree canopy, additional workforce things, homegrown circular economy, working on EV charging infrastructure. All of those things are part of this and part of the funds that are coming out of those franchise fees and other things to make that happen. So for those green cost share initiatives, there's two main programs that are running right now. At Healthy Homes, weatherization is run by the Center for Energy and the Environment, and then Cooperative Energy Futures runs a program that's more tied to the green zones on helping home weatherization there. And the Healthy Homes weatherization, many folks can actually participate in that. You can see some of the things. It's got to be single family, 2 and 4 unit owner occupied housing. 80% of household AMI is considered for that. And they can get low interest loans and fully weatherize and decarbonize completely. I know of at least one family who was able to completely cut off their gas supply to their house because now they have a electric air source heat pump and a induction stove and other things to help make that happen. And so that's been very beneficial. It also can include mold and bedroom walls and addressing those types of things, insulation, ventilation, and high efficiency furnaces and water heaters. So as we go to the next slide, last fall, the city shared kind of the results at that point in October. At that time, they had reached about 40,000, a little over 40,000 people interacted around climate change. 10,000 had gotten some type of direct assistance, and 25,000 tons of CO2 was reduced through the different programs. That's the equivalent of over 63 million miles driven by gas-powered cars. After only 2 years of implementation, it's had significant impact on the potential savings. As you can see on the next slide here, the focus on equity, I believe it's like 54% of the funds have gone to low-income participants. The housing units served, you can see there's 72 million in projected energy savings with the Climate Legacy Initiative. Transportation savings are looking at 110 million, and green cost share work over the last 9 years, about 254 million in projected energy savings, all on that $20 million investment over the last couple of years. And so there's huge impact for that cost. I'm sorry, I'm getting noises there. We're doing okay? Okay. If we look at the cost savings for residents, on the left-hand side, you can see the typical energy cost. We can see that Excel and CenterPoint want to raise their rates, and the cost of the franchise fee on residents, you can see that cost there in the middle. But on the right-hand side, you're seeing the minimum savings if homes are weatherized and electrified, and the maximum savings, which is around $525 per year per person. So if you're spending $10 a year more, $100 a year more to weatherize your home to help pay for it, over the course of that, you're going to see savings of over $500 per year. And so we're hoping to increase the funding so that more homes can be weatherized, more people can take advantage of the savings, and then we're mitigating that 1 to 1.5 billion that it's going to cost us for climate moving forward. So then as we look at the next slide here, in that presentation last October, they kind of showed that for the different sources of carbon, we're right now behind on our goals. That gray top line is kind of where we're sitting right now, and that black line is where we want to be to kind of get to zero carbon by 2050. And so we really need to increase so that we're not incurring a greater cost. We need to move toward a more impactful solution there. So what is one of those impactful solutions? Thermal energy networks are kind of where instead of each individual house or business putting in a geothermal system, which costs a significant amount of money but is most energy efficient, you can actually connect buildings and take advantage of the heat coming off of, for example, refrigeration in a grocery store next door, and other things like that to help heating and cooling, because the city received funding for a study about thermal energy networks last year, and the state actually did a project. The ground 8 feet below the surface is around 55 degrees year round. And so a thermal energy network uses ground source heat pumps and pipes connected, similar to our city's water or gas, to take advantage of this. Air source heat pumps, which some of you may be familiar with, is taking the heat and cooling from the air outside. And even when it's below zero, they can still get heat from that. Well, the ground temperature being 55 degrees consistently, they can take heating and cooling from that and be much more efficient. And on the next slide, you can see that efficiency. So I have one of the most highly efficient gas furnaces in my house, and it's that left column there. But as we move across, air source heat pumps are over 2.5 times more efficient than that. A geothermal ground source heat pump, just an individual building, is 4 times. But if we had network geothermal, it's 6 times more efficient. And so the energy cost savings is remarkable for that. And that's why we're really advocating for that. Now, the city of Minneapolis, as I said, commissioned a study. That study will be completed through next April. But already we're seeing some geothermal projects coming underway. So if you look at the next slide, the Kmart site, the team, the developers who won the award for the redesign of Nicollet Avenue at the Kmart site are including both solar and geothermal in theirs. The Democracy Center, their plan is to include geothermal with the potential for moving that to the broader community in a network moving forward, as along with the Sabathani community is putting in a resilience hub this year to help with their site, but also the potential of moving it out. And as you look at thermal energy networks, one of the things that they need is a hub for distributing through the neighborhood, and schools, park buildings, places of worship, all could potentially serve as those hubs for the community, all network together to help with that. And so our goals for this coming year are that we want to see the ramp up of dedicated funding from the current 14 million per year up to about 118 million by 2030. That was seen as the most impactful to get the most homes and taken care of in that amount of time moving forward. And we also wanted the city to explore the idea of having a network public utility, network geothermal public utility, so that we can take advantage of these geothermal networks as we move forward. Because right now, our utility companies, CenterPoint still wants to burn gas. They're about, they have only lowered the amount of gas consumption in the city from 2006 to now by 1%. And so we need to do better, and looking at a public utility is a way that we might be able to do that. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Mark to talk about ways that you can get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you everybody for this time. This campaign, the Climate and Equity Campaign, is a specific, practical way to do something meaningful on climate change. And for me, it's about our responsibility as seniors and as upstanding members of the community to work on climate change effectively and to guarantee that the economic development that comes out of it is shared and particularly is accessible with training for BIPOC communities so that the economic growth builds us all. So the first thing we're going to say, please join us. And can we do we have the link in the, yes, that's number one. Join the Seniors for Climate and Equity. You won't be in tons of meetings that last 5 hours, but you will help us move forward as we do our organizing of seniors in the city and give an added lift to this campaign because we can really make a difference. So I'm asking you to join. Please fill that out, and we'll welcome you in and get you going. Secondly, now is an important time to email or call Mayor Fry and your city council member to make investments in climate solutions a priority in the city budget. They're developing the budget now. In early August, the mayor will announce his budget, be presented to the city council. There'll be debate. We just want all those important actors, the mayor and the city council members, to be hearing from people. This is an important investment now. It is not the time to take a break and not do anything this year. We need to keep moving forward. So that said, please take that action. And lastly, if anybody is interested in hosting a house meeting, we had a house meeting here with 13 people on Tuesday night and about the climate and equity campaign. It was a lot of fun and we got good work done. A couple more people out of that house meeting are going to hold house meetings. If anybody here on this call would like to do that, please get a hold of me or Arlene and we'll help you get started on that. Byron and Aaron are doing one June 4th. Arlene and Beth Cerna, there's like 4 people who have committed to do it, but we want to hold more house meetings than that.